Hi, welcome to Priority Investor Conversations. I'm your host, David Garner, and this is the show where we talk about everything passive investing in real estate. We talk about note investing, private lending, syndications, rental properties, and almost everything else you can think of. And we have some amazing guests with some great experience and stories to share. So enjoy the show. Hey everybody, welcome to this latest episode of the Investor Conversations podcast. I'm David Garner, and in this episode I am super stoked to have Brett Burky with us, who's one of the co-founders of note investing platform Paperstac, which is paperstac.com. He's also a host on the Paperstac podcast, which is a fantastic podcast to listen to. I very much, if you're into notes or you want to get into notes, Brett and Rick on the Paperstac podcast is a fantastic place to start to learn about note investing. But Paperstac is an online platform where buyers and sellers can connect. They can buy notes, but they also offer a lot more to, and that's what I wanted to talk to Brett about today. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. Hey, Brett, how's it going?
Going good.
Good. I see you. Are you in your home studio there?
Yeah, turned the living room into a studio. We've got all the guitars, pianos, and so it's my daughter plays drums, and so She plays drums, and with all the tile floor, and we're in a very open space, it gets really loud, but it is what it is. It's fun on the weekends.
I've seen on Facebook actually, you're a guitar guy, right?
Yeah, so my background's in music before this, and then played for Disney for a couple of years, and my brothers play. My dad was a professional musician, so they just kind of have it. My daughter, one plays piano, and guitar, and the jazz band, and the other one's a drummer, and so we rock out. So it's a lot of fun,
Excellent.
It's a good time when we get together. It's fun.
It's the literal opposite to my family. There is not a musical bone amongst us, unfortunately. The only thing musical I can remember is my dad singing hymns at church once for a Christmas thing that my mum dragged him to, and him sort of making a mockery of it and fooling around, and her getting really angry with him. And that's as close to music as you get in my family, I'm afraid. But listen, we're here to talk about Paperstac. You are one of the co-founders of Paperstac. Most of my audience know what Paperstac is. It's a note trading platform. I haven't bought a note on Paperstac yet, and I haven't listed any. I've got a ton to sell, but I haven't listed any yet. We're focusing on other areas of our business right now, but it's definitely something I'm going to get round to. And what I've really enjoyed is watching the evolution of it, because it does a lot more now than it used to. And you're building a monster, from what I can see. You're building something that meets a need that's been in the note marketplace forever. And now the technology is kind of catching up. And from what I can see, you guys are really spearheading that. It's not just a place to find a note for sale, right? It's a lot more than that. So give me just a snippet of the genesis of it. I understand it. I've listened to your guys' podcast as well, which people should definitely listen to. The Paperstac podcast with you and Rick, you learn a lot about notes from that. I certainly have, and I've been doing it for 10 years. So that's a great thing for our audience to listen to too. But give us, for the purposes of this conversation, an idea of the genesis of Paperstac.
Sure. So the genesis of Paperstac it came from a need. Rick and TJ, they had been in real estate for 10, 15 years before that. And they stumbled into a note. Just the numbers looked right. They bought some duplex in Winter Garden, which is a town in
this
Florida.
Wooden frame thing I keep hearing about, right?
Yeah. And they flipped it in a couple of weeks, and it was just another way for them to get inventory. They had a terrible trade where they had a lot of friends and family money out, and they wired it to some stranger. The person went on vacation, and they thought that they had been taken for $200,000, and so they were sweat bullets. Eating dinner with their friends and family, and they're wondering where their money's at. And eventually it all came back. The guy that got back from vacation, he had put it in box, not Dropbox, but what the heck is box?
Yeah, I heard this. It was a kind of a miscommunication, but like when there's no noise coming from the other side, that's really scary. I've been there, and it's really scary. It's pretty scary.
Yeah, and so they did that, and then all they got back was a lost note affidavit for all the stuff, and they're like, what is this? And so they thought, this industry needs some technology. The investment class is great. You can make great returns, but this process is just not going to work. It's just terrible. So I bumped into Rick at a grocery store. I went to college with Rick, and we started talking. And I kind of, wanted to see what it was about. And so, I was getting tired. My background was in marketing, so SEO, paid search, stuff like that. But doing a lot of that consulting work, and I wanted something my own. I wanted my own thing, because you're building someone else's business all the time, and you get good at it, you're not getting a piece of it. I just didn't like that. And so, I said, I told Rick, I want in, and so we started there. And we got Mike, the fourth co-founder, who's a developer, and it was called Investment Note Exchange when it first started. And I was like, guys, did you think of the name?
Yeah.
Note Exchange. That's 2 E's. And it's 26 characters. And so Paperstac just kind of came out of a joke. We were at their office, and their office was like bean bags and, bankers boxes everywhere. And I was like, man, you got all these paper stacks everywhere. And I was like, I wonder if that's available, Paperstac. And the K wasn't available, so we're like, all right, we'll take off the K. Is that available?
Even better though, right? Now it's a buzzword.
I kind of like it, because it's not, the K would have made it stick out. It would have been hard for
it's a branding stuff now. It's a it's a self-fulfilling brand. It's a buzzword.
Yeah, and it'll fit. It's not directly in the notes. Like your brand. Like you could be anything. You can be real estate, notes. It can be all kinds of stuff, because it's not saying a note exchange. It's it can be whatever. And so that was pretty much the genesis of it. We kind of had a launch of a beta version, and just to see if it worked. And Rick and TJ sold on there, and people started showing up, and it was all right. We realized really fast that people were using it in ways that we didn't intend. They wanted pools, or they wanted this, and we didn't have a structure to it. They didn't know how to go to the next step. And so we scrapped that on that build. We didn't scrap it. We left it up, but we didn't do any development on it. And we're in the background building a whole new system. We relaunched that in 2018 at Note School, the Note School Expo, Note Expo. And ever since then, we've been building on top of that. And so that was where we realized we need a to-do list, something that people that don't buy notes every day, don't know what's the steps involved. And that was a big disconnect, where we saw it on the platform where, experienced people are like, I'm not going to teach you how to do it. If you want the note, you can buy it, but I'm not going to show you how to do this. So either you do it or you don't. And that would stop sales. And so yeah, that's pretty much how it started. And now it's just that's years ago now, 2018. That was when we officially launched it started in 2015, but we really got the stable version that we like to call in 2018. And we've just been building on that since.
Okay. So, I've been looking at it. I did my first note deal in 2010. So I've been kind of dipping in and out there. Mostly I buy properties now. So my day-to-day is buying houses for our affordable housing program. And we've got a private lending program for passive investors as well. And they kind of buy a note from us, or they get a note from us, and they loan us money to buy a house. But I've watched the thing kind of grow, and listening to you guys on your podcast as well. It sounds like every kind of evolution has been based on a need from the client base, right? So number one, finding how do you buy a note? Like we did a lot of SEO research when I decided to launch our business. We did a lot of SEO research. We're like, okay, what are people searching for? And it's like how to buy a note, where to find notes for sale, that kind of thing, right? So, you can understand from your SEO research, you're an SEO guy, what people are looking for, the questions people are asking, and therefore the products and solutions that might become good products for those people.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah. A lot of that is, yeah.
So how does one go about, because I like the sites from an outside user's perspective, it's what I like about it, it's really simple. You set your parameters, you set your filters. Like if you're going to buy a note, you can do, the first thing you need to do is educate yourself, first of all, so you know what you're looking at. But that's an entirely different conversation. You need to know how to run your due diligence. You need to know what you're looking for. But most people that I know that are new to the game, that haven't ever bought a note before, Paperstac's a great place to start, because they're not going to get tied up with a broker that's going to rip them off, or get tied up with somebody else's trash that they're just trying to fire sale out of a pool they've bought or whatever. They're going to be able to be a lot more selective and go and find a note that fits the parameters that hopefully, if they've done a bit of education, they've set for themselves. Do they want first or second? Do they want performing, non-performing? Do they want geographical area? You know, do they, what are their parameters in terms of their buy? And the filter system that you've got allows them to do that so they can really zero in. And I got filters set on Paperstac, and I've been looking for, like, nothing comes up in the areas that I buy houses in ever, unfortunately for me, because I'm very, very niche in terms of the zip codes that I'm buying in right now. Okay. Very niche. So I wouldn't expect anything to come up. But for most people, really, in my experience, speaking to a lot of newbie investors, their first thing, their starting point is, I've got X amount of dollars I'm prepared to throw at it. It's not, okay, I want this type of note or that type of note. They're like, I've got 20 grand, 50 grand, 100 grand, whatever it is. I'll go look for a note that costs about that much and then see what's out there. And that seems to be, from the conversations I've had, people's starting point. People can certainly do that on Paperstac, but there's obviously a lot more to it. What, you know, assuming somebody finds a note within their budget on your system, what happens then?
Yeah, so they could set that parameter, I guess, in the saved searches, and when they get the email that, hey, something matches your buying criteria, they can go to the site, view the listing, make sure everything looks, you know, up to spec on what they're looking for. Then they can just message the seller. We always, you know, there's make an offer, message the seller. Most people message the seller. They don't want to make an offer quite yet. But, you know, they can see, a lot of times you'll see in the bottom, it'll say how many files are included. So sometimes we encourage all sellers when we're onboarding them is to put a copy of the note, put a copy of the mortgage in the pay history. People are going to ask for it. You might as well have it there once. Most people that use the site regularly know to check the files tab where those files will be. Yeah. You know, make a good seller subscription. So you really just cut down on the questions. You know, if you just put a blank listing up there, no data, people are going to ask questions. But if you have it in seller description, like this is, you know, this is what it is, this is why I'm selling, you know, blah, 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 blah. It cuts down on that. And a lot of times we just, you know, tell the buyer, go in there and just say, hey, I'm just doing my initial due diligence, you know, and then based off that, you can kind of see what the files are after you get the chance to look at it. If everything looks good, make an indicative offer. We tell them, hey, look, make an indicative offer, choose your closing terms, because we do have escrow and audit. We do have the ability to not use escrow, not use audit. And then you can change up the cutoff date, which cutoff date just means when the payments stop going to the seller and start coming to the buyer. And so all those things are kind of negotiating things, and then put it like an indicative offer, like a bid that you would accept based off your due diligence. If everything looks good, once you run it, you'd move forward with that number, and then let the seller know, hey, look, I'm gonna go order BPO or O&E or check the title taxes. Can you hold it for me for, you know, just give me a due diligence period? And most sellers are, you know, they're cool with that. Only time we really have that where people run into problems is when they don't tell the seller and they just go off and do it. Mm-hmm. And then sellers, you know, getting a lot of offers, so they didn't know that you spent money. But we just say, hey, if you tell someone up front, hey, I'm spending money, they know you're a serious buyer, and that usually they give you time to go out and do your due diligence.
See, you've built a system for private buyers and sellers, which kind of mirrors when you're buying from a bank or a credit union, right? You get an initial tape of information, you get to do some initial due diligence, you put in a bid, then you get the flood of paperwork when you're buying from a bank or whatever. And then you got to kind of rapidly figure out whether what you've bid is ridiculous or reasonable, and then stick to it or adjust it and go from there, right? So you've now got, and there has been no system that I know of that has done that for private buyers and sellers before. It's always just been a case of, hey, I've got a note to sell, hey, I'm looking to buy a note, and then these two people trying to figure out how to do business together. Never mind, you know, I need to know this and you've got this piece of information, yeah, but I need you to commit to this. It's now you've got something structured where your buyer knows, you know, there's some rules and there's some expectations. So your buyer and seller can interact within the framework of those rules and expectations, which makes it easier for everyone, especially people that aren't used to buying notes, never bought a note before. You know, maybe they're like, hey, I found this perfect investment class that pays me passive monthly income with no problems whatsoever. Like a lot of the people that I speak to, like, yeah, go spend some money and then come back in 6 months and we'll have a different conversation. But it seems like that's what you've created. So explain the difference for people that don't know between the audit and escrow and no audit and escrow. Because I know the last time we spoke, you were working on a closing, right? In the back end, a big, like a big deal.
Yeah, that's almost done. Third party escrow company, which is a nationwide title company. And while your funds sit safely with that title company, the seller will send their collateral file to an auditor. And in the industry, it's a trust but verify. A lot of these people that are big, we have some big sellers on our site. They might think they have the originals. They don't always know. Sometimes they're with the doc custodian. They might be with Richmond Monroe or Casey Wilson or Ryan. They don't know. They got 1,000 loans. So they send that in, and they find out sometimes just as you as a buyer find out if everything's original. And so the auditor looks it over and kind of goes, this is what the borrower's name really is. Not sometimes people will put in Joe Smith when it's really like Joseph J. Smith, father or husband, whatever, the long thing. They get that right. They go through. They say, is this original? If it's not, is there a lost note affidavit? Is there original title policy, original note, original mortgage? And they're checking for a couple other things. And then
are they checking like the assignments and allonges are all like the same name, and there's everything's notarized correctly, and all the notary dates are in there, and all of that kind of stuff? Or is that a level above?
That's a level above. We tried to do that at one point. It's a
lot of work.
Time. Yeah, it takes a lot of time. Like usually, it would slow the transaction down by like 2 weeks, which is a lot. And so that's a lot of work. So I'll tell you, it's something we're doing. Actually, starting March, we are hiring a bigger development team. And so on that development team that we're bringing on, one of the things that they're really good at is they're good at machine learning and AI. And so we're going to be doing stuff where we'll be feeding it and building models to understand, this is what goes in the closing data. This is how to check assignment chains. Right now it's kind of pie in the sky, but they have the experience. And if we can do that, it's just like in this business, that's the bottleneck. As we scale, our ultimate goal is we're going to enterprise, and we're wanting to deal with the companies that are billion-dollar companies that are doing these transactions. But you can make bids on all these things, and that's great. But when you start to do the document prep and doing that due diligence, that's where just bottlenecks, because you're having to go through like painstakingly, is that the last person that signs it and assigns it to them? So checking assignment chains, filling out closing data when you're gonna do the assignment. Our biggest, a bottleneck as well sometimes is that someone will go to get something recorded, and maybe they didn't enter in the legal description right. And you've seen a legal description, they're god awful. They're like paragraphs long and all caps and some legal talk, So it's, it's hard for someone to sit there and look and type that. And so we're going to be using OCR and machine learning 99% of the time I was telling, we did got a whole bunch of assignments of mortgages and a whole bunch of notes and mortgages. And it is pretty much the same thing. When it says book and page, it says book and page. I don't ever really see a BK and PG. It's usually book and page or instrument number or parcel.
Definitely
number.
not that many variations anyway. There's
not. So if you had like 5 or 6 different variations, it's called training a model in machine learning. You're basically using the AI to train it. And so we're going to be pumping this through, just a whole bunch of data points to actually be able to. Legal description's always the same. Legal description. It's just big caps, legal description. So if they're able to pull all that, our end goal with that is to streamline the process. But that was kind of a tangent on just saying the audit thing in terms of checking the whole chain of title. We tried, it just really slowed down the transaction because we're only dealing with one vendor as an auditor. And so when we have a whole bunch of transactions going, they're a small team, and it didn't work. So what we just say to the buyer, look, we have services, we have people that we can get you in touch with. Kevin Shortell, somebody who can definitely look at these things. He's a good guy that can actually help you with going through the collateral packages. But they get a copy of it. They get a color copy of what was in the actual scan color copy of what is sitting in the auditor's hands, and they can go through it themselves. It's no big deal if you're doing one. When you're buying a pool of 15, that's kind of a pain in the butt. But if you have someone like Kevin Shortell, or you have other teams that can go through the docs, it's not a huge deal. So
well, that's like, if it was too easy, then everybody be doing it, right? The value in note investing is it takes some work and it takes some knowledge, and the tiniest little mistake can cost you a ton of money, and you can have some big wins as well. But in my experience, at least, it's about educating yourself. Where do you start? What are you looking for? Like even down to like notary stamps being out of date. I've had that problem. Stuff that you wouldn't necessarily think of until you have the problem, and then you have the problem, and then it costs you money, and then you know what the problem is to look out for next time. So I mean, you can't do everything for everybody. There's still got to be some art and science in it on behalf of the note buyer. But so the audit, and I would highly recommend that to anybody, unless they've got all of that knowledge already and all of the time in the world to commit to it. That audit and escrow provides them a level of safety and security. But what they get from the auditors is a verified list of what's actually there and what's valid as well. So it varies from state to state. Like in some states, you need originals. In other states, you don't.
Yeah, that's the important part, because still at the audit stage, the buyer's in control. So the buyer's funds are sitting safely in escrow. And at this point, this is your decision making. We have something called a disbursement agreement, which is basically just a legal document you sign. It just and all this is online. You're just signing all online. But it just says, yeah, this looks good. Everything's up to par. Let's keep rolling. If not, if you find something like, whoa, these are all copies and nothing's original, and this is my first time doing this. I don't know if I want to buy something that's going to take so much work, because I don't know the process. You as a buyer have your right to roll out. You can say, look, I'm sorry, this isn't what I thought it was. And as a seller, they should understand, okay, if I said it was all originals in the beginning and now it's not all originals, I mean, that's fair. Had you didn't know, or you said it was all copies and they kept going forward and got to the audit and realized it was all copies, it's like, I told you it was all copies. And that's not on the buyer at that point. But at that point, the buyer, they can request a rollback. And when they request a rollback, as the funds go back to them, collateral file goes back to the seller. We put it back on the market. All of the bidders get an email automatically saying, hey, this asset's available again. Buyer gets their funds, they can go find another one, and there's no fee for that. Just so
even if you miss out on something, there's a chance you can get it again if the buyer pulls out, right? So it relists.
Right. Yeah. So a lot of times I'll tell to some bidders, they'll ask, what's it mean when it says sale pending? I'm like, well, just what it sounds like. It's going to most likely sell. However, if you have interest in that note, you might want to just maybe leave a message. Hey, if this transaction does not go through, please let me know. And all that does is kind of put you on the list that if it didn't go through, you get that automatic email saying, asset at whatever address is now available again.
Yeah.
And you can go through. Had you not left that message, you would have never gotten that. You would never got the follow-up message from a Paperstac saying, hey, it's available again. So just a little thing like that. But most of the time, everything goes pretty smooth. We've only had a couple real hiccups. I mean, one, which was fair. It was a really tough time. It was like right at the beginning of April 2020. And so the buyer was like, I want out. And the seller's like, nothing's wrong with the note, and he was just kind of like,
both people want their money, right?
They wanted their money.
And it's the same bit of money. So they both.
Yeah, it was really hard for us. I was like, you guys have to come to the decision. It's like, it's the buyer and seller. Like, legally, we can't tell the seller to cancel, because we see it from his side too. Like, this is, and it worked out. The person stayed in the house and everything was fine. Just the buyer got a little cold feet, because none of us knew what was going on. It's a strange time. No, I still don't. No. And so,
it was COVID yesterday. Now it's World War III. So there's always something to worry about, right?
Right. Yeah. So it's just always. So that was the only time I've really seen something really funky. And there was one other time that was actually turned out into like a real hero story, because the guy thought the guy didn't know. He thought it was all. He thought he had the originals. Come to find out, when I went to the auditor, it was all copies. Buyer was a new buyer, and he kind of wanted out. And the seller's like, "Look, I'm moving to like South Carolina." He's like, "It's probably in a shipping container up north." He's like, "I can't go up north and get this one piece of paper." He's like, if he wants to cancel, and the buyer was kind of, there was a back and forth, and Rick was like, look, I'll buy it from him if it makes him happy. I'll buy it from him. And then Rick looked at it and he's like, look, man, just if you get a lost note affidavit, or you get the buyer to actually just sign something like a estoppel saying this is what's owed. You keep it for a couple months, you turn around, you sell on Paperstac, you'll make like $4,000. Come to find out, when he finally got it with the servicer, the originals were at the servicer. So this guy, the seller actually did discount it. The seller did discount it for him because of it, and they moved forward. So he even got a disc off what he currently bid because they found out it was all copies.
Yeah.
And then when he got it to the servicer, he found the originals, and he had the lost note affidavit, but he didn't really need it at that point. And he had the estoppel. And so he had a pretty good piece of, a nice collateral file, and he kept it for, I think, almost a year. And he was on the site again, and I didn't, somehow I had to talk to him, or something happened where I had to communicate with him. I was like, hey, wait a second. And his name rang a bell. I was like, did you have that issue like about a year ago? And he's like, yeah. I was like, no way. And I was looking at what he sold it for. It's like, look at you. He collected payments from the entire year, bought it for $4,000, came back and sold it for $12,000.
Well,
like,
there you
go. I was like, nice. So it
worked out.
Worked out for him. So that was really cool. So it was neat to see. But that was one of those stories that was just, those two right there are the ones that kind of stand out as like, the auditor is important, because had the auditor not been used, at that point we'd be out of the deal. The seller's gone, got the cash, or gone. So it gets a lot harder to do things at that point.
So this is what I really like about what you've set up, because I talk a lot with people about how the note game is like a human game, right? There's a human story behind every note, because someone stopped paying their mortgage, right?
Yeah.
And it's normally not a necessarily pleasant story, but it's about human relationships. It's about connecting. Like if you want to work out a note, in my experience, the first thing really you need to do is get hold of that borrower and say, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay in a house? Do you want to leave? Have you left? What's your story? Talk to me. If it works for the borrower, then it's going to work for you in most cases, right? So, but people don't really talk about the fact that the buying and the selling, that is massively a relationship game. Like if you're buying from banks, you need to know the REO guy in the bank. Like I would never have got involved in the notes I did back in 2010 because I didn't know the guy. These private equity guys from New York, Eric and whatnot that we work with, they knew the guys because they were buying and selling notes all the time. Like for me, British guy living in Spain, working for a company raising capital for other stuff. Like I didn't know anybody. I didn't even know what a note was. So that it's all about relationships, and what you're doing is making that relationship a lot easier, because now you guys stood in the middle. You're facilitating the relationship in the first place. Like Joe Bloggs in North Carolina can meet like Jane Smith in California, because one's got something to sell and one's got something to buy, and they can meet on your site. But also then you've got this process in the middle whereby you can protect the buyer and seller a little bit and make sure, because the note game is largely unregulated. There's a lot of, as you well know, there's a lot of scammers, and there's a lot of less than reputable people out there who will take any opportunity to take somebody's money. So it's great to have, and you're never going to avoid that. Like you're never going to get rid of those people, but it seems like you've built a system that at the very least, they can't get away with kind of telling the little lies that they might have told before, because you've got this process in the middle that keeps people a little bit safer, right?
Yeah, and that's one thing. People are used to doing stuff through emails and phone calls and stuff like that, and it's hard to change habits like that. But that's why with Paperstac we really try to push, like, hey, try to keep the conversations on the site. And it's not because yes, I guess you could go around, but I mean, we hope that we built such a system that's so easy to use. There's not really the need for it, and our fees aren't crazy. It's pretty reasonable for what we're doing, all the stuff we're doing. It's more for your protection, because if somebody says something like, "Oh yeah, you can totally do this," and they do it, they tell you on a phone call, and then you don't, and then it comes to find out you can't do that. We have no record. It's your word against theirs, and so now you've got a huge legal bill. But on a site, you can put your phone number in. We'll make a third-party connection phone call and connect you to it. The phone call will be recorded and it'll save on your timeline. So if somebody says something that's not truthful, you have a record of it. Every single thing that they say in the timeline, you have a record of it.
I wish I tell you what, I wish I'd have had that in about, what was it, 2017. We got I got involved with a guy that ended up in a really bad deal, lost about $1 million, which was about $500,000 more than I had. So I was sort of deeply in the hole after this. If I'd have had that kind of evidential trail, I would not have lost that money. So that's just in and of itself, that's fantastic. And there isn't really any competition for what you guys are doing, right?
What's that?
There isn't really any any kind of meaningful competition. And there are other note exchanges out there, but they're kind of dated, clunky, awkward, limited. There isn't really anyone out there that's doing what you do in the way that you're doing it and evolving it, like actively putting the money in and the time in to develop something that's public use and has all the facilities of Paperstac.
I don't think so. I mean, we Notes Direct has something that they have some technology behind what they're doing, and we're trying to work with them to kind of provide because a lot of they have the front end system they can go through, and they do walk you through the system. I actually haven't gone through a full closing, but I know they got some stuff, and there's a couple other of them out there. But really, at the end of the day, for us, we're like, why don't we just be like the SAP to your enterprise product? If you guys want a version of Paperstac, here's a version of Paperstac, and that's we don't mind that, because as long as they're using the backend system and they can still charge their fees, and we'll just charge a smaller fee. Like there's things like that can be used, because eventually what we're trying to get to, and I think it's going to have to go to that, because we want to be able to provide a white label Paperstac. Basically, you can put it on your site, put it on there, use the system. We don't want to be a competitor. We want to be an ally. Here's what it is, because in the end, at the end of the day, what we're trying to eventually get is we do these mid-year market reports and end-of-the-year market reports, and it's kind of
I read the last one. It was great.
Yeah, it's just so we're trying to get the data to kind of show what's selling, what at what price. Well, if we were able to have other platforms using the system, all we're going to do is make a better like Zestimate type. Like, hey, this is what everything's selling for based off all the platform data, and that'll really help our industry, because then not exactly, but at least a range what you should bid. If you're going on there and things are selling at like 80 cents on the dollar and you're putting in 20 cents on the dollar, they're like, take a hike, so
right.
Knowing this data, and so that's eventually it's going to have to get to that, where we're just going to that's what the note closings is kind of hoping to be, because it's basically kind of like an agnostic platform. It's just note closing. It doesn't say anything about Paperstac. I think it might say it in like the terms and conditions that this is. But who's ever reading those? So the whole goal with that is that, because we have people that are buyers and sellers that say, look, I have a buyer, or I have a seller. Most of the time it's usually I have a seller. They're doing like maybe postcarding, sending out the letters. I want to use your system. However, I don't want them to know about the other stuff on your site. I don't want them to know there's other buyers, because I don't want them to go list it there instead. And so they're trying to, we have a private listing, but still it still says Paperstac. You can create a private listing. Mostly that's when people want to use our system, and the buyer and the seller both know about Paperstac. They just want to use the technology to do all the doc prep and escrow and all the audit and stuff. But when someone doesn't know about Paperstac, they don't usually want their either buyer to know about Paperstac, because then they can say, whoa, look at all these other notes.
Right. I was going to buy this off him, but I found that over there now.
I found that one over there. They don't want that. So we're like, okay, we heard that enough times. We're like, look, we'll create something that's just completely agnostic. It's called noteclosings.com. You can take them there. You don't even have to be the seller or the buyer. You can set up the whole deal yourself and just invite them there and just send it out. And then we'll use, it's starting to look a little bit like Paperstac, but it's not a carbon copy, because we're going to, the whole goal, which I told Mike and the developers, like, don't make it too much better than Paperstac, because then, he's like, well, we'll backport it all to Paperstac. So he's using a new technology that's even more advanced to what we currently have to make it even better. Yeah. So it'll come out better, and then we'll eventually roll things back into Paperstac. Basically, everything in note closings is all the things that over time we've heard, we've got to put that in there sometime. Like, for example, we had a seller he came and he's like, he's got like 15 deals going on. He's like, why are we doing this ping pong where I have to wait for them to sign a document and then I have to sign a document? It's a pain in the ass on like 20 of these. I got to go ping pong and wait for the other guy to ping pong. And he's like, I just want to go through, sign all my documents. And when they get to that spot, it just pops in. It's just done. I'll take a couple hours, sit down, knock out all these things. Instead of every so often having to go and do that. And I was like, That makes sense. That's a really good point. And so that's something that's going to be ported into the new thing. Like, you're able to sign all your docs at once, so on all your documents, and they're not so much public facing. So, for example, if I was, I'm the buyer and the seller signs the assignment of mortgage. Well, I haven't sent the money yet. Well, I already got the assignment of mortgage. I'm going to go record it. So like you wouldn't have access to it until all the stuff's there, but all the stuff in the background's already done. So things like that, and some other little gotchas along the way that we run into. Doc generation. Hey, I just did one this morning. I put the wrong suite number. I need to regenerate the documents. You should be able to go regenerate documents, and it should just regenerate the documents. We do it, but it's just it's a little bit more manual. These are the things that affect scale. These are the things we know now. These affect scale. We can't get to enterprise and have thousands of transactions if we're having to go in there every so often and regenerate a document. This needs to be on the buyer and the seller.
Yeah, automation.
More automation. So especially with when you think about it, our big thing too is like, well, if it's noclosings.com, who's the support team? Are we the support team? Paperstac the support team for no closings? Like, how do we do that? So like, it's like we got to make it so that the buyer and the seller or the broker, whoever's put the deal together, is able to do every step of the process without our involvement. Otherwise, they were like, well, who the heck are you? Where did you come from? So those are the things we're going through with that. And eventually the whole goal is to give it to anybody who wants it. The No Trader X, or I'm trying to think of the other ones out there.
It worked for me on my system because I got 100 properties. All of those have got a note with a private lender. Some of those lenders are like, can I sell my note? Like, yeah, sure. If you find a buyer for it, that's fine. So that's for me, that kind of system is absolutely ideal to plug into the back end of our website. I go, if you want to list your note, list it on there on our white label portal, and all of our other investors, we've got like 2,500 on our list. They can go take a look at it, and if they want to buy it, they can make a bid.
Yeah, that's the goal. That's the goal. Eventually, if I have, if I can get one of the developers to let me do it, the eventual goal would be to make this almost like a WordPress plugin. Yeah. So, a lot of sites run on WordPress. Yeah, we have people that, they might have, their own WordPress stuff. We have people that actually have a link on their WordPress site that says, go to my listings, and we give them it's called a vanity URL, just like a short link with their, it's pstack.co, but then it links right over to Paperstac, and it's just their listings, and so that's kind of cool, but still it's on Paperstac. But, this way they'd be able to have it just be like a little plugin thing.
It's just a page on their website, opens up in a frame or whatever. I don't fully understand the tech and how it works, but it presents as their own. So, but effectively, Paperstac is a place you can find notes, but really what you're selling is safety and convenience. If you want to invest in notes and you want to do it with the utmost level of protection that's available, like nothing's totally protected, but if you want to do it with the utmost support and convenience as possible, then Paperstac is the place. Either that, or you can ring a guy who's advertising a note for sale, and you can figure it out with him as you're going along, and cross your fingers and hope you've not missed anything, and hope he's not a crook, and so on. You kind of eliminate all of that. It's like Amazon made it easy to buy books. Uber made it easy to get in a car, to grab a cab. And, in this country we have Uber Eats, you have DoorDash and whatever. That's easy to get food. If you want to buy notes, I guess Paperstac is heading towards at least being the place where you can do that with the utmost level of convenience, where it's not done for you, but there are elements of it that are done for you. And it's more convenient, but more importantly, there's some safety there as well. There's just a few more checks and balances than if you were doing the whole thing on your own.
Yeah, there's some other benefits we're doing right. We did what we have. It's called Partners. It's a partner site for right now, just the escrow and the audit company. But that also is going to come with the doc providers. So we're working out, because we have larger audience, we can order more documents. It'll be better for the end buyer, because some of these people are like, you're going to buy one BPO? It's not worth their time, but we're coming, hey, look, give us our rates. And so that's something else we're adding in there. So as a buyer that just needs to get a BPO, needs to get an O&E report, they can just click buy, and then it shows up in their feed. They can review it.
It's another layer of convenience. For me, that stuff's easy, because I'm buying houses in a really niche 3 or 4 different towns. So I can ring my realtor and I say, I need a BPO, and it'll be in my inbox in 10 minutes. That's dead easy for me. But I'm not buying something in a, the other side of the country, where I don't know anybody and I can't pick up the phone and just ask for a favor from somebody I don't know. So again, something like that is absolutely golden. These are kind of the little bottlenecks that people have in the world of buying notes that it looks like you're solving one by one as you go along, right?
Whack-a-mole.
Right. The trust me, there is never a shortage of moles.
The meeting I have right now at I have one is with the guy who it's called CSC. They do like they started e-recording like years ago. They're like the company. So like we're trying to, the ultimate goal would be able to have, like what I was saying with the machine learning in the beginning, pull all the data, put everything there. And now meeting with this guy today is, okay, everything's been done, all the assignments have been generated, everything's correct. There's nothing that's gonna, and we ping all the, the counties to make sure that this thing can go digitally. And now we just, with one click of a button, we connect to this company's API, goes all out to all the counties, gets recorded, and awesome. Fireworks, it's glorious, That's the ultimate. That's the ultimate, breaking the bottleneck. And if we can do that, that's magical. And I mean,
the way you tell you're in new territory in business is like nobody's done it before, so you've got to figure out how to do something. You've not like, okay, they're doing it, we're going to do it better. You're in the kind of space of, well, nobody's doing this. How can it work? Like, so it's an exciting space to be. But like, I know you're time sensitive, so let's sign off by saying somebody who is new to the game, they're saying, okay, I've got 20 grand to invest. What's their process? They visit paperstac.com, with it's Paperstac without the K, Paperstac, STAC.com, and they set their filters. So that could be where they want to invest. It could be just the amount. It could be first, second position, all that kind of stuff. They should have done that homework before they get to Paperstac. They won't, but they probably should have. What's the process from there? Send the message to the seller, and then it kind of takes care of it. It kind of becomes a relationship at that point, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, really just, there's, if they want to look up just Paperstac Safe Search on YouTube or whatever, it's just, that's it. Just set up a safe search and let the stuff come to you. That's, you just have to have it register for an account. It's free to register. Just have that set up. Stuff comes to you when it does. Just like, click it, start a transaction with we call it a transaction, but it's the conversation. It's a transaction, conversation, whatever. It's good. But you start that and just go through the process, and we've done it in to-do list. It's all you have to do is just follow the next step. We've had people, it's a great weird thing we've done in the sense of people who've never bought a note can buy notes now from hedge funds. And we had a guy I saw at a conference. He's like, if I hadn't followed he's like, I saw who I was in a transaction with once I saw the vesting profile. And he's like, I was a little intimidated because they're big boys. And he's like, I just knew if I just followed your to-do list, I could get through it and I would buy it. And so he's like, I did it and I bought the note, first one ever. It was from a huge hedge fund. So kudos to the to-do list. And on the exact opposite side, at the same conference, where those hedge fund guys, one of the sellers on the site's like, I love the to-do list. I was like, really? Yeah, that's cool, man. That's like, I'm thinking in my head,
isn't it? The little things you think, maybe that'll be useful. Everybody finds super useful, right?
Well, the reason why is he's like, I'm able to sell like 2 rungs down. I was like, okay, explain what you mean. He's like, well, we're up here, we're a big, multi-million-dollar, couple $1 million, $100 million fund. Well, usually I sell to the guy that's like, the 50, and down fund, He's like, I just skipped this one and this one. I'm selling to the mom and pop buying for their self-directed IRA. I'm right here. I'm selling at 70 cents on the dollar. Here I'm getting up to like 85. This buyer's happy because they're getting a good deal at 85. Yep. And I'm happy because I'm getting a good deal at 85. So we were both happy because now I'm up here and I met him or her, and we bridged the gap. And so he's like,
those guys in the middle that are going to be pissed.
I know.
But you're connecting buyers and sellers, because that first guy you talked about, he's never going to meet the second guy you talked about. They're just not. They don't operate in the same circles, and the hedge fund guy, it's not like he's listing stuff on Craigslist. It's
a lot of the hedge fund guys that we deal with sometimes they also don't like, they're not in the public eye. These guys aren't attending conferences.
No,
they have usually like Reg Ds or whatever they have, they're structured funds. They're not going to be, we're not flaunting on social media. They're just not there. You have to meet them like I don't know, just, organically. They kind of
you have to be introduced to these people. In my experience, like I was introduced to the private equity guys that brought me into my first note investment. It was an introduction through a third party. And the higher up the financial scale you go, that tends to be how things work. And that's one of the best things about Paperstac is this Joe Bloggs, an idiot like me, can go and buy something from an amazing hedge fund who has raised hundreds of millions of dollars. They really know what they're doing. And with you guys in the middle, I know that, with your to-do list and the escrow and the audit, if I concentrate and focus a little bit, I'm not going to get ripped off.
Yep.
I need some education and some knowledge to make sure that I know what I'm looking at. But I think you've facilitated it, because the volume of people that are interested in notes now, an alternative asset class, is growing exponentially. It really is. I had a conversation with a new investor of potentially of mine today. They're getting a little older. They've got 16 up plus rental properties. And the lady was like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. We want to either buy notes or do lending, because we like real estate. We understand it. It's asset backed. But you were the only guys we could find that were offering something like a homogenized product. And I think so that's private lending. But I think in the note world, it's not going to be too long before it's going to be, I'm not buying a note. I'm going to go shopping on Paperstac. So from what I can see, at least, it's kudos to you guys for creating something that the market really needed, and it genuinely solves a few problems as well.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
No worries. Well, listen, I'll let you get off for your call. Thank you so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it, Brett. I know you are a very busy guy, spending a lot of time developing, and I would recommend people also listen to your podcast as well. I know I've already said it. But the Paperstac podcast, they're real short episodes that I really like. I walk my dogs in the morning, and it's either you or Joe Rogan or a couple of others I'm listening to. So it's a fun podcast, but people do learn something as well about your system or about notes in general. So thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it, and speak soon.
Thanks. It's been an honor. Thank you so much.